Hello, this is Paige Nuez. I'm Director of Training and Development at rettsyndrome.org. And on behalf of our Board of Directors and team, we're so pleased to bring you this free webcast today to deepen your knowledge of the myriad number of ways that you can contribute to Rett syndrome research. Many of us do fundraising and we fund our investigators, and there are ways that you can engage in research, and we also want you to know where your fundraising dollars are going. And we're so pleased today to have a webcast where you will get a chance to meet two of our investigators in the field and hear about their projects and their programs that we are funding through your help. And you'll also get to hear how you can help them succeed in their work. Your children are incredibly important to us. We're working very hard on treatments and interventions, and having your attention and engagement today truly demonstrates your commitment as well. So we're very glad to have you with us. Before we begin, if this is your first go-to webinar experience, I want to share some very brief technology points to help it go well for you. The audio feed is open only for the presenters, so you don't have to worry about your background noise interfering with the presentation. If you look to the upper right corner of your screen, you'll see a control panel window. And we invite you to write in your questions or comments into that question or chat box throughout the presentation, and we will answer them as time allows at the end of each presentation. And if we don't get to your question during today's webcast, we will work with our presenters to get all of your questions answered through email. Now, if that control panel window is distracting to you, you can click on the small orange box with the white arrow to minimize that window, and then you can click on it again to expand it if you wish to submit a question. I also wanted to share that we will be recording today's session, and you'll receive a link to the recording shortly after we conclude over the next few days. So don't worry about taking notes. You'll be able to revisit the recording, and you can also share it with anyone in your circle of friends, family, contacts who weren't able to join today. We want to get this information out to our entire community, and we hope you'll be able to share it through the recording. If you're having any trouble hearing, please check and turn up the volume on your phone or device. And if you have any troubles during the webcast, we found that sometimes just quickly closing out GoToWebinar and relaunching it will resolve any problems. But if you're having any troubles, type them into that chat box and we'll help you individually. So right now, we'd like to introduce our first speaker today. We're going to be hearing about two different projects. One is the Inter-Rett database first, and the second project we'll be hearing is about auditory learning that's being conducted at Vanderbilt University. So the first speaker I'd like to introduce is Dr. Helen Leonard, who many of you know, and is joining us from Australia. It's 1 o'clock in the morning in Australia, so I don't think anything could demonstrate her commitment to Rett syndrome more than her willingness to work around the clock on our behalf. She's a senior research fellow and a leading authority on the epidemiology of intellectual disabilities and specific syndromes, especially Rett syndrome. And she's been researching Rett syndrome for well over 25 years worldwide. She has established the Inter-Rett database in 2002, which is partially funded by rettsyndrome.org, and has been collecting data on thousands of individuals with Rett syndrome from over 50 countries. And that metadata is incredibly important to our understanding and our fundamental understanding of the natural history of Rett syndrome. We appreciate everyone who's contributed to that database and encourage everyone to participate, especially after you have a chance to hear from Dr. Leonard today. She has published, Dr. Leonard, 130, 140 publications in peer-reviewed journals. So she's widely known, widely published. And the data that has come out of Inter-Rett has also contributed to two very helpful brochures that are available on our website that many of you know, focused on one on scoliosis management and another on gastrointestinal issues. And she's going to be sharing today how you can contribute yourself to Inter-Rett, as well as discussing a new component and program focused on sleep and breathing. So with that introduction, we'd like to now take a moment to turn the screen over to Dr. Helen Leonard and let her walk us through some new information about Rett. And we'll take just one moment to turn over the slides.
Okay, I'm here. Can you see my first slide?
Hi, Dr. Leonard. Yeah, we can hear you just fine, and we can see your first slide, the Rett database, looking back and looking forward. So please go ahead and get started with your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to rettsyndrome.org and Paige especially for hosting this webinar today. We really appreciate it, and it's very important. So I wanted to introduce you first to some of the members of our team here at the Telethon Kids Institute in Perth, Western Australia. You can see me at the front, and behind me is Amy Epstein with the red top. Now, Amy is our project coordinator for Rett, so you may have received emails from her or even spoken to her on the phone. On her left is Neda, who's a psychologist who's been working with our study now for quite a number of years. And on Amy's right is Kingsley Wong, who is our website manager and also our data analyst. The three others are students, and Sharilyn on the left is working on sleeping issues in Rett syndrome, and Jess on the right in breathing issues. Now, unfortunately, Jenny Downs, my colleague, is missing from the photo because she was the one who took it. But you may already have seen her a couple of months ago when she gave some webinars during the virtual conference. So I just wanted to, this slide really underpins all our research on Rett syndrome. What we are trying to do is find answers for families. But when a child is diagnosed with Rett syndrome, families want to know the cause. They want to know what is their daughter's future and what they should they do now. They want to know whether she'll walk, whether she'll talk, whether she'll get epilepsy. And they want to know what's the best sort of schooling for her as she grows older, and how can they best use her functional abilities. As she moves into becomes a teenager, the families usually want to know how they can plan for her future day activities and medical care needs. And very important, they want to know what are the ingredients for a good quality of life. Other important questions that we've been asking over the years are what determines why girls and women with Rett syndrome, although sharing many symptoms, can be very different from one another. And I'll give you an example of that later. And secondly, how can we modify or improve the clinical course of Rett syndrome by either making changes to the environment or by implementing medical treatments and interventions. And some of that work Paige mentioned is in our guideline booklets on scoliosis and gastrointestinal issues. But we're still working a way to improve our information about these and other comorbidities. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of background history, first of all, on the Australian Rett syndrome study, which I established in 1993. And the idea of the Australian Rett syndrome study is to enroll all girls and women with Rett syndrome born since 1976. Now, when our families enroll, they complete a questionnaire about their daughter, whilst their clinician also completes a questionnaire. And families have been enrolling over the last 20 years. Now, over that period, we've administered 7 follow-up questionnaires so that we can follow these girls and women over time as they grow into adulthood. We've also collected videos on 3 occasions. As well as that, we've collected information, we've undertaken densitometry scans, we've collected EEG and ECG data, growth parameters, Cobb angles, and we've been to all the major children's hospitals in Australia to collect clinical records. So this has provided a wealth of information, and you probably can't see, but on the right-hand side, I've shown some of the areas that we've used this data to investigate early development, diagnosis, genotype-phenotype relationships, functional abilities, feeding and growth, scoliosis, epilepsy, many other topics. However, we realized that although we have population data in Australia, Australia is a small country with a population of only 23 million, and Rett syndrome is rare. So in order to look at the variability of Rett syndrome by some mutation types, we need much, much larger samples. So the need for an international database. So the aims of InterRett are to provide a large sample of cases for analysis, to encourage collaboration among researchers around the world, and to increase the clinical understanding of Rett syndrome. Now, in the current funding round, provided by rettsyndrome.org, these are our current objectives: to give families a strong voice in research about Rett syndrome. And to do that, we have a consumer reference group of parents both in the US and other parts of the world. And we meet by teleconference perhaps twice a year. And if any new families would like to join that group, we'd most welcome them. So giving families a strong voice, expanding data collection to facilitate evidence-based management. So we want to find the best ways of management for many of these comorbidities in Rett syndrome. And we also want to focus on families who live in underrepresented majority world countries, like China, for instance. And only this week, we had 50 new families join InterRett from China. And finally, we want to provide an innovative and efficient mechanism to disseminate research findings and provide clinical support. So as I said, we have a global approach. We invite both families and clinicians to participate. And questionnaires can be filled in online or by paper. And the questionnaires are available in a range of different languages. We collect information in the first instance about early development, regression, diagnosis and genetics, current functioning, and medical complications. And the language, and on the right, you can just see two examples of the languages. Above is Spanish, and below is Mandarin. So when we collect this data, we are able to, we have bulk data both from clinicians, and these have come from countries like Spain, France, Israel, Austria, Greece, Mexico, and Canada. And sometimes that comes in a different format from the data that we collect from families. But we're able to harmonize that data to provide the same outcomes as the data that we receive from families. And then we look at this data according to age group or MECP2 mutation type. And you can see here on the right-hand side at the bottom, this is an example of the severity scales that we have calculated from the data, and we have looked at it according to mutation type. And what you can see, because we've got such a large case group, we can see significant differences between the different mutations. And above, you can see the countries that are represented in InterRett, the US being one of the major contributors. So I just wanted to show you one example of how we previously used your data. Our research question was, do girls and women with a C-terminal deletion in MECP2, and the C-terminals are right at the edge of this graph you can see on the right-hand side, do they have a less severe symptoms than those with different mutations? So what we did, we compared the characteristics of the 79 girls and women with C-terminal deletions at that time with the 753 individuals who had other MECP2 mutations. And what we found that generally those with the C-terminal, especially the younger ones, had lower scores than the rest of those with other mutations. So we were able to say that these children with these deletions had slightly less severe symptoms. They also specifically had later onset of hand stereotomies, and they were more likely to learn to walk. Interestingly enough, they were also more likely to have kyphosis, sort of forward curvature of the spine, than the typical scoliosis. They also had better growth and height. Now, I just want to show you this little video to illustrate the variability in Rett syndrome.
Hi, Mrs. Leonard. My name's Kylie, and I'm 12 years old. I have Rett syndrome.
What grade are you in?
6th grade.
What's your favorite subject in school?
Math.
What's some stuff you like to do?
Oh, I like to play basketball. I like to go swimming. I also like to play with my sisters. It's softballs with my dog.
What's your favorite thing to do?
I like to ride my bike.
Is that your favorite?
I like to ride horses. I like candy.
You like chocolate?
No.
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 What kind of kid doesn't like chocolate? Huh?
Not me.
I think you're goofy. What do you think? Huh?
Yeah.
All right. Can you say goodbye?
Goodbye.
Maybe sometime we can Skype, huh?
Yeah, maybe sometime we can Skype.
So I just wanted to show you a video that little girl has a C-terminal deletion, a very similar mutation to a lot of other girls and women. And so I believe that Rett syndrome really is a spectrum. She's at the very, very functional end, and other children are much more severely affected. So our new study is looking specifically at how common sleep and breathing problems are in girls and women with Rett syndrome. And we want to identify what the risk factors and what may be protective factors for sleep and breathing problems in Rett syndrome, and to find out whether there are treatments that are really working for these conditions. So why do we need information about girls and women with Rett syndrome, as well as information about mice? These studies here show how breathing in a mouse model of Rett syndrome was improved by a certain type of drug. But there is a real good possibility that we could use these drugs in humans, in girls and women with Rett syndrome. But at the moment, there is no information in the literature on how common these abnormalities are, how much of a burden they are, and whether they affect particular age groups and mutation types. So we believe that this is information is so important to collect, and we would like those of you who haven't, to join us in this study. So what this would involve for you, if you're already registered with Rett and completed a questionnaire on your daughter over the last 12 years, all you need to do is send us an email to rett@telethonkids.org.au, also provide your current telephone number. We will send you an email with your individual link to the study questionnaire, and one of our team will also phone you to make sure you've received the email and that the instructions are quite clear. Now, if you haven't previously participated in Rett, what you need to do is go to our website, interrett.org.au. You need to click here under Participate in Research, click under Rett like that, and that will take you to this page here where it says click here to join Rett. Click here, and then you'll be asked for your name, your daughter's name, date of birth, and mutation type if you know it. So if you can do that, we will then send you the basic questionnaire. Once you've completed that, you could then do the sleep and breathing study. So I just wanted to show you a few screenshots of our website and show you how you can search our databases when you go there. So if you go to our research, search our databases, and then you can create graphs for yourself looking at mutation type, language, epilepsy, mobility, feeding, and a range of variables which you can cross-match with by age, by mutation type, etc. And these are just some examples here of the sort of thing that you can search for. And this one, is looking at ability to walk by age group, and the one below is looking at current epilepsy by age group. So you can search and provide yourself with graphs such as this. The other thing that you can do on the website is you can look at our research snapshots. So again, if you go to our research, and then down here in the menu it says research snapshots. Under research snapshots, you will find summaries which we hope will have been done in understandable language about the many publications that we have published in the academic literature. But you just probably want a summary and you want to know the important points, so you can find that here. And this here is just Google Analytics showing who has been accessing our web page over the last 10 days or so. And you can see, apart from North and South America and Australia, there's been a lot of interest from China. So in summary, the InterRed project collects data on a global scale. It's a powerful resource that can be used to address a wide variety of research questions. It really is a model for rare disease research, and it's being copied for other rare diseases. So our ongoing objectives are to continue case ascertainment, make ourselves even bigger, and collect longitudinal data on the girls who have been in our study for a long time, and make sure we make the maximum use of this valuable resource to answer some of the pressing questions in Rett syndrome, and take advantage of technological advances that permit pooling of de-identified data. Thank you. Paige, would you like me to show you the web page, or is there no time?
We have just a few questions, but if you would, I would love it if you would jump into the website so that people could see live how to navigate.
Okay. Yes. So we're now in the website live. If you go to participate in, so it's interret.org.au at the top, interret.org.au. Go to participate in research, click on InterRed. There we go. And here it says, click here to join InterRed. And of course, you can see here some of the different languages that we have the questionnaire in. That's not even all of them. So click on Join InterRed. And you will be asked to provide this information. Your name, your surname, the name of the individual with the disorder, whether they have got MECP2 mutation, duplication, or CDKL5, or whatever, their date of birth, and your address and telephone number and email. So when we receive that, we will then try and contact you to tell you about InterRed, and we'll also send you an email with a login and password where you can enter the data for your daughter's family questionnaire. So that's, and then after that, we can contact you about the sleep and breathing study. So going back to the website again, if you want to go to search our database, a little bit slow. So you click on our searchable online database. and say you just want to look at the distribution of the different well, this shows you this is the countries here, but say you want to look at mutations, click on just on mutations, and I'll put common mutations, and I'll put create graph. So this shows you the distribution of the common mutations in our database. You can see that this one here is T158M, which is the commonest one, and this one here is C-terminal, which is the one that I was talking about earlier. So that's that, and if you want to go to our research snapshots, click on research snapshots, and say you would like to look at this any of these. We've got the studies classified into communication, genotype, and clinical patterns, and Rett syndrome and health. So let's say you wanted to look at atypical presentations. Click on Read More, and this tells you about atypical presentations and specific genotypes were associated with a delay in diagnosis in females with Rett syndrome. And just an example, that little girl that I showed you, who is 12, I think, she's only been diagnosed in the last few months because she didn't have the typical features and she wasn't identified. So one of the things that we're trying to do is to make sure that doctors know about the spectrum of this condition, so that they can, so that all cases are identified and diagnosed at a reasonable time. Would you like me to answer? Is there time for any questions, Paige?
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for walking through the website. That's really helpful. So everybody, I hope that you were able to follow Dr. Leonard into Rett and see how you can participate yourself, and then some of the amazing functionality that this database has. I think it's unique in the fact that it's not just data in for research analysis, but you as a parent can go into this database yourself and create graphs and answer some of the questions that are on your mind, which is just a spectacular function, I think, for all of us. There is no crystal ball for any of our children, but the more participants that we have, the better trend data that we can use to inform some of our research studies. So I really want to thank you, Dr. Leonard, and your entire team for your commitment. If you, I also want to let folks know that you can find the Inter-Rett database off of rettsyndrome.org. If you go to rettsyndrome.org, scroll over for families contributing to research, you'll see a direct link to Inter-Rett, and you can find the database there. So now I'd like to just take a few minutes, Helen, to let you know some of the questions that have come in. Yeah. One of them I'd like to offer, we have a family that lives in the U.S. who's Japanese American, and she commented that she doesn't see Japan listed in one of your countries, and she's offering her services to help translate the material and to get the word out to families in Japan about the Telethon Institute and your work. So I can connect you with that parent.
That's just wonderful. I mean, I will tell you that we have actually a Japanese doctor who is doing some voluntary work with us at the moment. So that's another connection. So that's great. That's very exciting. Yes, yeah. So okay, I'm sure wonderful. Perhaps the doctor might also like to talk to her. Yeah.
Okay, great. I will connect you when we conclude our webinar today. Okay, so another question that has come in. Is, in your experience, do you have any reported cases of a girl who's lost her ability to walk and talk after the age of 12? I
think there might be some some very rare cases of
So walking is different than preserved speech, so maybe you wanted to address those separately.
yeah, yes, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, certainly there are those who definitely who do lose their mobility skills. There's no doubt about that, and that could well happen after the age of 12. The speech is a bit unusual, but I know that we did look at that data, and we think there were one or two. We had a girl, a young woman in Australia who had an unusual mutation, and she had quite a different trajectory from normal in that she deteriorated in her early 20s. I mean, so I think it may, that speech may happen, but it's pretty rare. Yeah, that loss of speech at that age.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. All right. Let's see, in the interest of time, I'm going to ask one or two other questions, and then what we will do is export all questions that have been sent in, and we'll get answers for all of the questions, work with you after our presentation today, and then we can send them out to everyone who's registered for the webcast. But I do want to get Dr. Peters enough time to talk about her study. So if that's okay, let me ask one more question that has come in. And okay, and this is from a family in Australia. So they want to know if they have completed the BRIS questionnaire, if that, the BIRS, the BIRSS questionnaire, if that data feeds into Interret, or if they need to complete both questionnaires separately. So if families, and this is probably a general question because there are other databases around the world that families have contributed to. Can you comment if any databases feed into each other, or if families specifically always need to contact you about Interret?
Yes. So that, was that the I wonder if that's the UK one she said. She said BR, the database.
BIRSS. It might be.
Yes, British, yes. So, in fact, no, that doesn't feed in at the moment. So generally, families need to contact us. We have actually found that some, which is great, we have actually found that some of the Australian families have registered with Interret, and we wouldn't have known about them if they hadn't registered with Interret. So that was absolutely wonderful for us that they come, whichever way they come to us. That's great. But we did find that, for instance, we got all the clinician data from Spain, and we did find that some Spanish families also contacted us separately. So we have to be very careful that we don't, that we don't put a record in twice, that we check. So when we have a new family, we always check that they're not in the database already and that we didn't know about the child. So in this case of this family, I would definitely suggest that she contacts us.
Okay, thank you. And she did confirm that it's the British Isles survey, so it is in the UK.
Yes, no.
Yeah, so I wanted to let our community know that we've had many meetings trying to merge data sets from a variety of databases, but given the longevity of our knowledge of Rett syndrome over the past 30 years, many countries have started databases and done data collection of population studies. Helen herself has done one in Australia around Australian families, and it just is very difficult retroactively to merge data sets that were not collected and asked questions in the same way. That effort has not stopped, and we're still continuing to find ways to get that power of numbers, but Interret is just a tremendous database in that it does enable families from all over the world with speaking all language and from all different experiences to contribute. And you don't have to leave your home, you don't have to travel to a clinic, you can do it remotely, and Dr. Leonard and team will work with you directly, whether it's by phone or by email. They're an amazing resource to help you participate in the database. So we encourage you especially if you're feeling like you want to contribute to research and there's just not something close to you. This is as close as your keyboard, so please take the time to contribute. And if you ever get a call from someone with an Australian accent asking you to contribute to Rett syndrome research, you can feel confident that that this is a solid group. They are backed by rettsyndrome.org, and we encourage you to accept their call and engage and work with them. So Dr. Leonard, I know it's 1:30 in the morning, your time, so if you'd like to stay on, we would appreciate you continuing to stay on, and if you want to hop off and get some sleep before your workday tomorrow, we would certainly understand. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you.
And we're going to really switch gears here from database collection to a researcher who is trying to develop testing assessments for not necessarily cognitive measures, but what we all know as families is that we know that our girls are in there. We know that they know more than they can express. We know that we talk to schools and therapists and our local care teams all the time to say believe in her, but we know that there really aren't tests that can truly assess the depth of understanding and connection and communication that our girls are capable of. And I'm really pleased to introduce you to Dr. Sarika Peters, who is running a research program that is focusing on neurogenetic disorders and trying to find biomarkers and approaches to identify how to assess clinical features, how to assess levels of ability in a population who is nonverbal and difficult to assess with traditional treatments and traditional testing measures. So Dr. Sarika is going to share with us today her specific study. Let's see, there we go. We've got your screen up here, Dr. Peters. Thank you. A specific study on auditory processing, language, and learning in Rett syndrome and related disorders, and she's going to explain exactly what that means. And she's also going to explain that she is a new site for the natural history study that is funded by the NIH, and a little bit about her Rett syndrome clinic. So for those of you who don't know, we now have this wonderful clinic for Rett syndrome, MECP2 duplication, CDKL5 related disorders in Nashville, Tennessee. So we hope that we're getting broader access to great care as well as research for all of our families related to Rett syndrome. So with that introduction, Dr. Peters, I see we've got your webcam live, we have your slides live, and welcome. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. So as Paige mentioned, I'm just going to talk with you all a little bit about a current study that we're doing on auditory processing, receptive language, and the purpose of this is to try and determine sort of higher level processing in Rett syndrome. So I am going to talk you all through, as soon as I can do this here. There we go. I'm going to start out by just telling you some of the goals of our study. So I think many of you are probably aware that some of the conventional standardized psychological assessments that are in use, they are not so suitable for this population because they require hand use or they require some type of verbal response or some type of motor response. So with that in mind, and part of the difficulty with that is that these instruments are also not sufficiently sensitive to capture the full range of functioning in Rett syndrome or Rett-related disorders. And why that's a concern is because it also then means that we don't have measures that are as sensitive to be used as tools for some of the amazing clinical trials that are underway right now. So in keeping that in mind, the goal of our study, what we really wanted to do was to develop a novel cognitive neuroscience approach using some really cool technology that's we call them event-related potentials. And what we wanted to do was to look at auditory processing, language, and learning in both Rett syndrome and MECP2 duplication syndrome. And We are really focused on 3 different aims for this particular study. One of the questions that we are looking at is, what is the ability to differentiate speech or real words from non-speech sounds, or what we call nonsense words? We also wanted to look at auditory memory or auditory learning. So this is a task where there are no visual cues at all. We just wanted to get a sense of receptively what are these girls and boys able to understand, and also capture their capacity to learn and their memory. So how well can they retain information that they've learned? And then a third task that we're doing focuses on name recognition. So what is their ability to distinguish their own name and the name of some close others from the names of strangers? So I put a slide up here in terms of who can participate. We are trying to recruit 15 patients with genetically confirmed Rett syndrome, 15 with genetically confirmed MECP2 duplication syndrome, and we have a more narrow age range for this particular study, and there's a reason for that. So we are enrolling individuals between the ages of 4 and 12 right now, and part of the rationale for that is because of the way that this particular technology works. The ERPs work a little bit differently, and the patterns are different as individuals get older. So we really needed to separate the age ranges. That's not to say that we won't study older individuals in the future. I've already had some questions about that. Just for this particular study, we needed to focus on a more narrow age range, and for now we chose to focus on this particular age range, but we would love to expand it in the future. Because these are all auditory tasks, we ask that participants have normal hearing. So wanted to tell you all what we do during a visit. Each visit lasts for a total of about an hour and a half at the most. What we have the child do is the child sits in a chair very much like what you see on the screen here. This is actually our lab. And all they have to do is sit and listen. They're going to listen to several different sets of words and nonsense words, and then also a set of names. The child is going to wear, it's basically a modified EEG cap. These are all part, it's really a cap that just fits on top of the child's head. And these are soft little sponges. I have to emphasize that there's no gel involved here. There may be little droplets of water that are placed just to keep the cap in place, but that is all. And the key with this is that there's no verbal or motor response that is required. These are completely passive tasks. And we have a movie. It's not really a movie. These are just some shapes that are being shown on the computer screen in the background. We didn't want to show a movie like Dora or any cartoons that or videos that would be familiar, because that introduces a completely different element. We really want the focus to be on the auditory learning and on the auditory tasks. So what this cap does is it uses salt water to transfer brain waves. It's very easy to place on the child's head, and we haven't had any difficulties with placement of the cap for any of the children that we've seen so far. And something that I will also do, I know I've already talked about how standardized measures don't work as well in these populations, but I am using the Peabody Picture Vocabulary Test to try and get an estimate of your child's current language level. And we are just viewing that as an anchor to these tasks that we're doing using the ERP technology. And part of that is because these tasks are new, and we just scientifically and for research purposes, we want to be able to demonstrate how those tasks align with a standardized measure that's already in use. moving on, oops, I skipped a slide there. This is just an example of some of the results that we've found so far, and I want to place a caveat in here. What I'm showing you is only based on the results of 5 girls with Rett syndrome that we've enrolled so far. So we clearly need more participants. We have actually completed enrollment of our typically developing group already. But if you look, the line in blue is the name of a close other, and the line in purple is the child's own name. So in the typically developing group, they are clearly making distinctions between their own name and the name of a close other. And examples might be a sibling, a best friend. We've even had some parents give their dog or their child's pet as the name of a close other. And in Rett syndrome so far, they are clearly distinguishing their own names from the names of others, but we don't have the same pattern for the name of the close other as of yet. And again, based on our enrollment so far, we've only seen 5 participants, so the data as they are now are not ready for publication. We clearly would like to enroll more participants to see if that trend is going to still continue or if this line is going to move further up. And I didn't place a slide on here, but I can tell all of you that are listening in that, again, based on the data that we've collected so far, we do now have evidence that the girls are capable of, they are forming a memory trace. So they are capable of auditory learning, but there is a time delay as compared to the typically developing group. So the good news is they are processing the same information that typically developing controls are, but that there is a time delay that's involved with how they are processing that information. And again, I can't emphasize enough, we would love to get more participants enrolled to see if that trend is going to continue. So if you all would like to participate, Dorita Jones is the study coordinator for this particular study, and you can see her phone number and her email there, and I have also placed my email here. And the other exciting thing that I wanted to tell everybody about is that Vanderbilt is also a new clinic and research site. So we are now part of the natural history study. I am one of the investigators involved in that, and Dr. Carrie Fu is a wonderful child neurologist who actually trained down in Birmingham with Dr. Alan Percy and with Jane Lane. And he is so thrilled to be part of this team, and he's so excited to be seeing girls with Rett syndrome and boys with MECP2 duplication syndrome again. So if you all are at all interested in coming to see us in clinic, Anita Poulton, who many of you may already be familiar with, has actually joined our team. She is a clinical research nurse, and on a personal note, her granddaughter also has Rett syndrome, and so her knowledge and expertise is actually invaluable to us because we have the luxury of having her on our team to also provide a personal perspective as well as a professional perspective. And so I've placed her email here on the screen, and her phone number is there as well. We have 2 different locations where we are seeing patients for our clinic. We have a location that's just a little bit south of Nashville down in Franklin, Tennessee, which may be closer for some of you. And then we also see kids and families here at the main campus. And I will emphasize that for the research study that I talked about, we don't have, it obviously will require an in-person visit, but we have worked with local hotels to try and get reduced rates, and Anita is also an excellent contact for working with any families on travel plans or things of that nature. So with that, I would be happy to take any questions that you all have. Are there any questions at this time?
Oh, sorry, Dr. Peters, I had you on mute. I was talking. Thank you for this wonderful presentation. I'm so excited for the research that you're conducting, and I really hope that anyone who's in the area is able to contact you and enroll. You may have mentioned this, but I really want to underscore for every research project, there is a significant amount of time and effort that goes into setting up a study. There's a significant amount of time and effort that goes to promoting the study and seeking enrollment. And then once enrollment finishes, it's going to take a significant amount of time on behalf of Dr. Peters and her team to do the analysis and publish results on the study. So what can we as families do? We can enroll and participate as soon as possible, because the sooner that she can work with our girls and do her observations, test out ERPs, test out this new technology, the sooner she can publish results that will help in clinical trials, clinical drug trials, to be able to assess change and improvements with drug therapies, and also get papers published that will help all of us, whether we're working with IEPs and with schools, to really understand. I mean, for me, it's so exciting to hear that there might be documented proof that I can take to an IEP that says delayed auditory processing, give her time to respond, slow down. We say that all the time, but if you can publish a paper that will help validate that, I can just imagine how much the learning experience could be transformed for our girls. So thank you so much for your work. I wanted to point out to everyone on the phone that in your dashboard panel for GoToWebinar, there's a section called Handouts, and we have uploaded 2 handouts. One is for details on how you can enroll in Rett, and one is how you can enroll in Dr. Peters' study. So you can find that handout, pull it out, print it off. You can also find details about her study by going to rettsyndrome.org. Scroll over for families contributing to research, and you'll see her research study published there. Okay, so in our last few minutes, Sarah, I do have one question from you from a family who's already eager to participate, but their daughter just turned 13. So is it a hard cutoff at 12, or would you consider talking with this family?
I will consider talking with this family. If she's a young 13 and just turned 13, we could probably work something out. And I will say the same at the other end of the spectrum. If a child is within a couple of months of turning 4, that's okay also. And the main reason for that is that for the lower age range, we actually want to ensure that a child is not still in the phase of regression. So, you know, if it's a child that's younger than 4, I will probably talk with that family just ask some questions.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Okay. Let's see. A family asked again if you could explain how many visits would be required for this study.
Sure, it's just one visit that's required, and the total visit time is about an hour and a half. I mean, I would say if you allot 2 hours, that's very safe. Anita Poulton usually joins me, even though she's not the coordinator for this study. We kind of all work as Team Rett here. So yeah, we usually coordinate our visits fairly well. Okay. And if you can just tell us, you know, a day and time, and we try to be flexible and work around schedules as well.
Fantastic. So if we have a working family and travel on weekdays isn't possible, would you consider assessments on the weekends?
We have done that before, yes. And I will say we are actually, we're taking our show on the road next week. We're actually traveling to Houston and are going to be collecting data at a conference at Baylor. So So yes,
okay. So not to put you on the spot, but if we have any families in the Houston, Texas area with a child with Rett syndrome?
Absolutely. Please contact Dorita, and please do so like today or tomorrow. So that, and the reason for that is because of the task with the names. Dorita has to ask a couple of questions and has to ask families ahead of time to go through a list of names and have them mark through the names of people that the child definitely knows, and then the names of people that the child doesn't know. For the other two tasks, it's not important.
Okay, great. And so just as a side note, if you'd like to send me an invitation, I can post that on some of our social media channels that would reach our families in the Houston area.
Okay. Sure.
I know we have families that would be eager to participate, and we do have a quick turnaround time.
That's great.
Okay, so I have one last question for you, and then we'll be at the top of the hour. And as promised, we will get all of the questions that have been typed in to Dr. Leonard or Dr. Peters answered, and we'll get the answers out to everyone who registered for the webinar, along with a link of the recording. So yes, we will send a link of the recorded presentation within the next few days. So Dr. Peters, you were doing some research a few years ago, and we had some families who maybe did visit with you in 2011. Can you clarify if this is new, different research, or if it would be repeat so they don't need to contact you?
Absolutely. So, yeah, and that's a great question. So this is actually a new study, and all three of these tasks are new. That study from back in 2011, 2012 was a pilot study. And we're kind of testing the technology and just getting a sense of how it would work in these populations. And the task that we did in that particular study was more of a voice recognition task. So it was whether we were looking at whether they would distinguish the voice of their mom or primary caregiver from the voice of a stranger. We've now progressed to the tasks in this particular study are much more focused on language, memory, and kind of higher level processing. So the names task is I would say probably the most related to what we did in the previous study, but even that it's more language based and not based on voice recognition, which is what that prior study was based on. So it wouldn't be a repeat since this is new information. And I will also say I have actually written letters for IEP team meetings for a couple of families that have come and enrolled in this study. We don't consider what we're doing, this is not anything that would take the place of school-based testing, but we have been able to help some families gain access to additional services based on some of the patterns that we're seeing. So, I mean, just us being able to say, yes, your daughter with Rett syndrome was able to learn the same information as a typically developing child, but at a delayed rate. That, for example, has been very helpful to a few families.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for clarifying. And I also wanted to thank you for the times that you have presented at our conferences, and we look forward to having you present at future family conferences on many areas of expertise that you have. You bring so much to the table. This is a very specific research study that you're doing for us, but I know that you also bring so much information as a psychologist to the understanding of Rett syndrome, which is very different than the perspective that many of our neurologists bring to the table. So thank you. We have to look at Rett syndrome from many different lenses, and yours is a very valuable one that is unfortunately very underrepresented in our field. So thank you for being a rock star in that area.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, well, good luck with your travels. We are at the top of the hour, so I want to thank you, and I want to thank Dr. Leonard for your time today. We will continue to bring you webcasts of this kind to feature different research programs that are being funded by your hard-earned fundraising dollars, as well as additional care webcasts that we presented during our virtual conference week in June. This has been an incredible format to reach far more families with really, truly life-altering information, and it is a deep commitment on the behalf of our board of directors, myself, everyone at rettsyndrome.org to improve the lives of our kids today, as well as working fast and furious towards treatments and interventions. So thank you for joining us today. Thank you to our presenters. We look forward to celebrating Rett Syndrome Awareness Month in October. Please keep an eye on our social media channels and our newsletters for ways that you can engage and really get the word out that Rett syndrome is not as rare as everyone thinks, and it's going to take all of us as a community to raise that awareness and make the change that we want to see happen for our kids. So we thank the professionals who are committed. Your enthusiasm, your energy really is inspiring to each of us in our lives, and we are happy to support your work. And to all of our families, thank you for all of the love and support and care that you give to your kids. And we are thrilled to know you, we're thrilled to know them, and we're thrilled to see their development be improved by the information that we can bring you. So thank you again for joining us today. We'll get the links to the webcast out to you, and we will get all of the questions that were texted in answered, and look forward to engaging during October Awareness Month. That's upon us in just a few weeks. Thank you, and this concludes our webinar for today. Bye-bye.